Jane and Tarz. A reimagining of the Tarzian tale. A plane opens. A plane load of mercenaries flying in to destroy a Nazi weapons lab gets shot down. A mercenary named Jane, Lady Jane to her friends, is the only survivor. She takes a moment to mourn her co-workers. Then, being a good mercenary, begins the long trek through the jungle in the direction of the lab to complete her mission. Lady Jane checks her weapons, a gun, a knife, and some hand grenades. Suddenly she sees a man swinging in the trees above her. She believes that this must be the ape man that the locals speak about. She tries to communicate with him as she points her gun at him. I am Jane, and you are? I Tarz, you Jane, he said as he senses danger. So he sweeps her up over his shoulder and carries her up into the trees while motioning for her to be quiet. Just then she sees a group of Nazis searching the woods below them. Soon they pass by and Tarz forgets all about them and smiles at Jane. What are you? Jane wonders aloud while admiring his incredible muscles. Tarz thumps his chest and says, "Ooh, ooh, 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 ooh." Jane points towards the Nazi biolab. Tarz says, Bad, no go. He has seen too many of his friends killed by them, the bad animals that live in the place. He senses the danger, but he can see she is determined to go to that lab. So he grabs a vine from the tree and throws his other arm around her waist as he shows her how to swing from tree to tree using the vines. By the second tree she is grabbing her own vine, and they are moving through the jungle at a good clip. When they reach the biolab, Jane immediately kills 2 Nazis and throws one of their rifles over to Tarz while she takes the other one. Tarz has no idea what to do with the rifle, so he slowly lays it down and starts surprising Nazis and knocking them out one by one by thumping them on their head. A Nazi shoots at him but misses, which frightens him, so Tarz leaps onto some branches and escapes. Meanwhile, Jane has made it up onto the roof and sees him flee. She is glad he got away. Jane continues firing at the Nazis as she is dropping her hand grenades down the pipes up on the roof. She hears these massive explosions inside of the building, and she knows what is about to happen. She quickly leaps off the roof onto the guard tower and climbs to the top where she can see people fleeing from the weapons lab. Then she leaps over to some branches and starts off after a group of high-value targets, Nazis, brass, and scientists who are making their escape in a truck. Just as she is catching up to them, she sees Tarz sitting upon an elephant running at full speed right into the side of the truck, striking the passenger doors and pushing it off of the side of the mountain. Jane watches as it tumbles sideways down the mountain and explodes. There couldn't possibly be any survivors. She swings down and jumps onto the back of the elephant, and she and Tarz ride off into the sunset. The next day, Jane and Tarz return to the crashed plane. Jane can see that hers was not the first plane to have crashed at the bottom of Killer's Peak. She retrieves some communications equipment and supplies from the plane and stacks them up, and then she tells Tarz to stay here, protect my stuff, stay here. Then she treks up to the top of Killer's Peak with her communications gear where she sets it up. Lady Jane decides that she is going to use this location to observe and report to headquarters on the Nazi movement and their airstrip for the British government. Come in, Winston. Come in, Winston. She prays someone will hear her. A crackling over the radio and then a response. Winston here. Is that you, Lady Jane? Yes, responded Jane. I am in position and will report daily at 500 hours. Over. Very good, Lady Jane. Are there any other survivors? No, there are no other survivors. None? Oh dear. I see. Do you have anything else to report, Lady Jane? Nazis' weapons lab destroyed. Several high-value targets killed. I am well. Very good, Lady Jane. Over. So she turned off the equipment and climbed back down from Killer's Peak. She saw that Tarz had followed her, and all of her supplies had been placed neatly near the tree. She knows Tarz must have had help, but she sees no one else around. Mysterious man. Lady Jane shares some military rations with Tarz, but he doesn't like them much and instead brings her some bananas. This is a strange world I have fallen into, isn't it, Tarz? Jane says, not expecting a reply. Tarz responds, Jane smiles and says, yes, Tarz, baby. This is going to be quite some adventure indeed. A few days later, she went back to the crash site, not to retrieve any supplies, but to examine the other plane that had also crashed there. Then she spots the cargo hold, and there are some chests in there. She thought they looked important, so she opened one, and Tarz started getting upset, so she closed it and backed away. Okay, she thought to herself. You are connected to this plane, aren't you, Tarz? The end.